Hi everyone, this is Vaishak here. Welcome back to Sports Kati, and with me is Rohit.
Hi everyone.
So cricket is finally back. So we're doing another episode on cricket, and it started with West Indies beating England in their own soil in the first test post COVID-19 lockdown at Rose Bowl Stadium in Southampton. So the series started off, like a well contested, but then as it went along, England showed that they are above West Indies. The real reason why they haven't lost a single series at home since 2014, and it would be hard to believe West Indies would be the team to break that. So England clearly demonstrated the depth of their squad in the bowling department. While West Indies, they have the talent, but they clearly showed lacking in depth. Their bowlers look tired by the end. England batting lineup is not complete. They have frailties, but that's where even, the Caribbean batsmen to be even more in disarray, and they clearly lack the temperament to play the unlimited overs format. Anderson and Broad clearly showed that they are still in the frontline bowlers in the team. So this is my overview. I'm done. Now I want to see you. I think you have prepared a bit. So talk us through the series.
Yes, Vaishak. Firstly, it was great to see some live action cricket. My friend had told me that the lack of crowd doesn't impact Test cricket, as the crowd is generally low for Test matches. Yeah, but having said that, it's true. But in England, we generally have decent turn up people, but even for Test matches, and I have to say that I did miss that, especially the crowd going, in England, "Rule," or the Barmy Army, cheering the fans, cheering the players up. I do miss that. I did miss that. But anyways, now coming to the cricket action, this series started as a clash of the all-rounders. So currently, Ben Stokes and Jason Holder are ranked 1 and 2 in the world for all all-rounders, and the first match did live up to that billing. It was a contest of all-rounders. Jason Holder went on to pick 6 wickets in the first innings to set tone for the match, and also stayed unbeaten during the tricky chase in the fourth innings. And he's one of the players we overlook when we talk about the best all-rounders going around. I've just put up some numbers of Jason Holder's here, and you can see that if you see his numbers since 2018, he has taken 53 wickets at 14.5, which is exceptional from pure bowling point itself. And he has also scored 40 plus average, shows that his contribution with the bat also is impressive. Yes, that batting average is slightly boosted thanks to his double century against England last year. But then it was not a flat track innings. That innings came in a match where England was dismissed for 77 in the first innings. And he came on to bat when West Indies was 61 for 5. So yes, anyways, as mentioned, he started off the series well. But then as the series progressed, he did fade off like rest of the Windies team. Now his counterpart, Ben Stokes, has not been far behind also. These are his numbers for the last 2 years, and you can see he has been really impressive. He has been averaging more than or nearly 50 in the last couple of years. And even in the bowling department, he has been averaging less than 30, which what do you call as a perfect batting all-rounder. So he has been impressive. And in this series, yes, they lost the first match, but even in that match, he did score a couple of 40s and was the highest run scorer for England in that match, and also picked up 6 wickets in the match. So he still showed his all-round prowess in the match. But his real big performance came up in the second match, where in the first innings he went on to score 176. And then in the second innings, when the need of the hour was for quick runs, he came in and scored a quick unbeaten 78 while opening the batting. That is just wow. And the match showed how much he's developed as a batsman, and also his versatility, as his first innings century came in, I would say, around 250 deliveries, whereas second 50 came in just 36 deliveries. And I also learned another interesting fact about him, that now with him opening the batting in the second test, he has now batted in all batting positions. It's a good fact to know. Anyways, coming to the test series itself. So other than what the all-rounders did, the first test match of this series was also the first match Broad has missed at home since 2012. he has been a permanent fixture in the England lineup for I don't know what 8 years now. But for some reason, the England board felt Anderson and Broad cannot play together anymore, as they are not good enough. But then the way Broad has come and balled in the second and third match showed that he's not over yet. And Anderson-Broad combination is still lethal, at least at home. West Indies, did fade off as the series progressed. Their batting has been poor, apart from maybe you can say Blackwood and Brooks to some extent. Even they also had an on and off series, I would say. Shai Hope, who has been the linchpin in the ODI team, has been more of a burden for West Indies in the Test arena. He has been averaging only around 25 in the last couple of years, which is very poor for a top order batsman. And I can definitely see the likes of Darren Brown and Hetmeyer walking back into this team.
Before we finish about the series, I would just like to add about Broad as well. Broad coming back, playing a crucial part in making England win both the Test matches, achieving the 500 wickets in the career, ended up being the highest wicket taker for the series with 16 wickets, and also the man of the series. So even though some might argue that Ben Stokes is more deserving of the man of the series award, it's Broad who got it. He's the highest wicket taker in the series. But the way Broad has been performing now, I see him crossing the 563 wickets tally of Glenn McGrath, and even giving the most wickets by a fast bowler in Test matches record a real run for its money. The person who holds the record, by the way, is Anderson. Let's not forget he's still playing. So it's incredible that this pair of Anderson and Broad, they are at the edge of achieving a legendary status. If you watch them individually, they don't give the impression of being the best bowlers in this generation. I don't see them making into many categories of all-time Test 11s. But they are clearly a different beast when they hunt in pairs. Now, coming to the post-coronavirus cricket, there have been a few rules which have been in place to ensure safety, and there were a couple of violations and fines. Can you give a bit of an insight into this?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, before I talk about those incidents, let me just explain these new rules to our viewers. So, firstly, we have the COVID-19 replacements. Like for like replacement allowed for a player displaying COVID symptoms in a Test match. We have the rule of no use of saliva on the ball. Umpires can issue 2 warnings if a player applies saliva on the ball, fine and penalty for repeated use. And you must have read in the news a lot of players, especially fast bowlers and ex-fast bowlers, who have come and talked regarding this topic and how it can impact a Test match. Anyways, that's a different discussion. Non-neutral umpires, that's another rule that has come in. Not required to appoint neutral match officials, which has been the practice for the last, I think, 20 years now. So now the ICC will be appointing locally based match officials. There will be an additional DRS review. So an additional unsuccessful DRS review for each team in each innings of the match. So it is going to be 3 per innings rather than what it used to be, which is 2 per innings. And the fifth rule is about additional logo allowed. So there can be a logo not exceeding a particular size, which can be placed on the chest of the Test match shirt and sweater, but not really relevant to the cricket match itself. So these are the 5 rules that has 5 new rules that have come up. Now, a couple of these rules are not exactly due to coronavirus, or maybe the local umpire rule has forced them to include the need of an additional review. So maybe yes. Anyway, definitely the rule of having an additional logo is not because of coronavirus, but rest of the rules are due to coronavirus. And in this series, we already have seen a lot of reviews, and quite a few of them were overturned. I don't have the stats top of my head for now. Actually, I will talk about a couple of incidents, and you will see that I'll be covering a couple of them there. The first one I want to talk about is the minor one, which is a small violation that happened. It can be a possible trivia question in the future. Who was the first player to accidentally use saliva on the ball in the post-COVID-19 era? And the answer is Dominic Sibley. Yes, Dominic Sibley, during the second Test match, accidentally used saliva on the cricket ball. And this was brought in notice of the umpire by the players itself. There was a warning issued, I believe so. But anyways, the ball was sanitized using a sanitized tissue paper, and then the match went on. Anyway, the other violation was slightly more severe. So as per the protocol of the series, there was a biosecure bubble, which is players shouldn't wander out and go away from the team. And Jofra Archer, after the first match, while traveling while traveling from one venue to the other venue, or in this case to the hotel, he took a detour and went to his house, which meant he violated the rule. Firstly, this was irresponsible, as this could have created a lot of short-term and long-term problems. Short-term, he was forced to miss the next match, as he had to undergo 2 COVID tests, and only once they are negative he can play, which meant he missed out on the second match, which could have been really critical because it was a crucial match and England was down 1-0 in the series. But more long-term and more severe, what could have happened was that in case if he was tested positive, then there was a possibility the series could have been called off. And this could have affected the confidence of future series also. So luckily, this did not happen. Jofra Archer did not test positive, so nothing major happened. And, I really agree with Michael Holding. He pointed out, asking the question, why were the England players not traveling by a team bus? Why were they allowed to travel by individual cars? Because that is the reason why Jofra Archer went away. I mean, yes, he didn't follow the rules, but I felt, as Michael Holding pointed out, they should have traveled by a team bus. Anyway, something which they can look into for the future matches and series.
As you say, future matches and series, let's look at future matches and series. We have Pakistan tour of England starting very soon. I don't think we are talking anything about England playing Ireland in an ODI. Let's forget that. So Pakistan is touring England, and I think that should be an exciting series, given Pakistan recently have performed really well over there. The last 2 series ended in a tie. Slight disadvantage in the current Pakistan squad because there is inexperience, compared to their past tour squads. But nevertheless, they do have young and fiery set of bowlers in the team. So we have seen in this series that England batting is frail, and I believe Pakistan is capable of giving much more of a scare than what West Indies.
Oh, definitely. I do agree with you that this Pakistan bowling attack will be fun to watch. But then the batting, I believe, will be tested in these conditions. The batting will revolve around a lot on how Babar Azam can perform. I mean, he has been exceptional in the last couple of years. And if he's going to have a good series, then I believe there is enough in the bowling department to help them win the series. So I expect that series to be a thriller. Let's hope Pakistan lives up to the billing.
I think you have also prepared a bit about IPL. So what is your update on IPL?
Regarding IPL, we have some updates coming up. I mean, most of these are just talks going on for now. So as we speak, the latest update we have is that ECB, when I say ECB, it's Emirates Cricket Board, not English Cricket Board. So Emirates Cricket Board General Secretary Mubashir Usmani, I believe I'm saying the name right. Anyways, he has confirmed that they have received a formal letter from BCCI regarding of hosting of IPL in UAE. And the dates proposed by BCCI is from September 19th to November 8th. Now, Mr. Osmani was cautious and right in saying that there are many factors which influence the operations and logistics of hosting what is world's most exciting, popular and lucrative tournament. He also did say about the risk this can bring with the massive movement of people and equipment. But anyways, we can understand things are set in motion. So can say feasibility study is ongoing and we should be expecting updates soon. I also had read that, given the proposed dates, Australia and England players will be missing the first week of IPL, given Australia tour of England for the 3-match ODI series will go on till the 16th of September. So this can obviously impact the makeup of the teams greatly, as there are some key players from Australia and England who play for various IPL teams. We will have to see as we get closer to the IPL on how the team structure, schedule, etc. is to see how the teams will be going to this IPL. The conditions and pitches in UAE also will have a big impact in the IPL. If I remember rightly, during the last stint of IPL in UAE in 2014, Mumbai Indians had lost all other UAE matches. but then eventually they did come back to India and went on a winning run, which allowed them to qualify for knockouts. So you see, when people say going to UAE, the pitches and conditions will be similar to India. We have seen the results might not be not the same, and obviously this time around we will not have any audience to watch the match also. So even that might have a big impact on the performance. Anyway, as we get closer to the IPL, as I mentioned, we will take a deeper look into it.
So we looked into the two formats of cricket. Let's get into the third one, one-day internationals. ICC had announced the initiative of World Super League. Just like Test Championship, there is a pointing system for all the international sides, and the inaugural cycle is starting right now. So ICC has come up with some recent announcements regarding the World Cup qualifications. What is the implication of the World Super League for World Cup qualifications? If I am right, you have prepared a few things to explain the format of this tournament as well, and how the World Cup qualifiers work.
Okay, I wanted to talk about this because this is something, it's not new, but something that's starting now. So it's starting on July 30th with the series between England and Ireland. It's something I'm really looking forward to, because there have been a lot of, I would say, not so meaningful ODI matches, a nice way to put it. And this, I believe, will bring a lot more context to those matches. So I have put up a simple flowchart to explain on how the Super League will impact the World Cup qualification for 2023 World Cup. So as you can see in the flowchart, the 12 test playing nations and Netherlands are part of what we call the Super League. Now, top 7 teams in India as the host will qualify directly to the World Cup. The bottom 5 from the Super League will go into the World Cup qualifier. Now, World Cup qualifier also will have these 5 teams plus 3 teams from League 2 and 2 other teams from playoff. So now your question is, what is League 2? So League 2 consists of teams such as Nepal, Scotland, UAE, and also top 4 finishers from 2019 World Cricket League Division 2. In simple terms, it's teams ranked 14 to 20. So you just consider 7 teams from ranked 14 and 20. Okay, so from those. Anyways, so they will compete among each other. Top 3 teams go to the World Cup qualifiers and bottom 4 go to the playoff. So that's a simple understanding. Now, playoff will also have 2 teams from mini competition where teams 21 to 32 will compete. I know when I'm talking, all this might look complicated. That's why I put up this flowchart here. I hope it explains to you, what's happening and how this Super League or the other small divisions play a part to decide who the final teams for the World Cup will be. Now why Netherlands in the mix in the Super League? Now that will be a question that comes up. I guess 12 test playing nations, but why Netherlands? It's because they were the winners of the 2015 to 17 ICC World Cricket League Championship. So that's why they are there. And, I have not put up the schedule here. I have not shared the schedule here, but the schedule is available on pretty much all prominent websites. So do check it out to see where the series and which country play which countries, because not all the teams play every other team. So do look out the schedule to see how your team is playing or who your team is playing. Anyways, the benefit of such a Super League is that, firstly I mentioned, it definitely adds value to the matches which earlier did not have context. We used to see a lot of this 7-match series which did not have much value. Now this definitely adds value to it, which I mentioned earlier. But something I want to add up is that now, for example, a team like Netherlands, okay, this will help them a lot, because until 2017, now these are numbers, okay, until 2017, they have played a total of 17 bilateral ODIs in the history of Netherlands cricket. Whereas the next 2 years alone, they are scheduled for 24 matches. Now, this shows significance it can have on Netherlands. And okay, numbers might not be this drastic for other teams, but definitely this will benefit teams like Ireland, Zimbabwe also. So the lower teams get a chance. And on top of this, this also opens up for teams which are ranked lower, that is 21 to 32. I mentioned the 2 teams which goes into the playoff, and they also get an opportunity, a fair fight to have a chance to qualify for the World Cup. So overall, I would say this is a right step in the right direction. ICC has taken a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have made a good point over there. It provides an immediate context to all bilateral series from now on. And also it ensures that, no team keep playing each other for long. So if I'm right, there used to be, accusations that India keeps playing Sri Lanka every time in the starting of last decade or something like that. Such commercial bilateral ties will reduce, and the teams will start playing each other. And especially teams like Netherlands, Afghanistan, they'll start benefiting from this because they will get opportunity to play good one-day international matches. So before we conclude, I would like to mention one rule change. So during the Super League, all the front foot no balls will be called by the TV umpire and then communicated to the on-field umpire. This will definitely eliminate errors from the system, but how will it impact the flow of the game is yet to be seen. Okay, viewers, I think this has again also been a long episode. Let's know your comments. We would like to hear from you. We have talked about many series. We have talked our excitement about watching cricket again. Just let us know about the excitement that you are experiencing as well. What are your opinions about watching England, West Indies? What are you looking forward towards Pakistan-England series? And what are you expecting in the IPL that is going to start in UAE? If you like our content, do support us, like the video, share with your friends. And I think most of you are subscribed. If you have not, please subscribe as well. That's all from us. Until next time, stay safe.